I'm Kinglink, and it's time for the Humble Choice February 2020 review. As always, I've played each of these games for an hour, and now it's my chance to tell you what I think about them, as well as who will like them or not. I've had a pretty good weekend, as this is a very interesting bundle, so let's go down the list, starting with Outward. With this being the big headliner and being called an open world RPG, I was expecting a lot, but the actual game is actually a punishing game that will challenge players with its combat and world. There's no nice, neat path to follow or a massive list of objectives that players can do in any order. Players are going to be thrown into the world to fend for themselves. The problem is, Outward hasn't found a game mechanic that it didn't want to include. It has cold and hot weather mechanics that seems to harm the player, multiple status effects, weight management, the ability to drop your bag to avoid its weight in combat and destroying it, durability systems, survival systems, of course water and hunger, even has status effects. This game has a split screen mode for 2 players as well as online play. There's just so many systems here. This would be an extremely impressive game if everything was executed well. But instead it's actually more of a rough game. It really needed more polish. The tutorials feel off. They're kind of terrible in my mind. Several systems also feel a little bit off as well. The combat is like Dark Souls, and the menus are too, but I know a lot of fans of this game seem to hate that comparison, and I think it's because people who like Dark Souls might not like this one. Outward is a really hard one to judge. I would say that if you liked Kingdom Come Deliverance, you're probably going to enjoy this game. It's a very challenging game where you grow from nothing. However, after an hour of playing it, I'm really not enjoying it myself. I won't be returning. It's going to appeal to other people, but this is not a game that I would recommend. Valkyria Chronicles 4. This is a strategy RPG which allows you to move your units like you're in a third-person shooter and tactically take shots and move to cover. It's really unique, but it's also pretty well done. This is a long game, like 40-ish hours, as well as having a large RPG story revolving around... Okay, listen, this is about World War II, no matter how they dress it up, which is odd from a Japanese company, but whatever. The mission I'm on took me about 30 minutes, and this is the first mission after the training, so they will be beefy missions. The Valkyria Chronicles series is also really tactical. You can't just run out and be the hero, instead you have to plan your moves and utilize all your units. The actual moves your characters will make play out like snippets of an action game. You can move your units, possibly getting shot at, and then you have to aim and take your shot. Time pauses so you can line up your shots, which makes sniping really easy. This is more strategy than action, even though it might look like the opposite. But I'm having a blast with it. I also really like Disgaea and games like Fate Tactics, where it's a slower and more complex system. So if you like strategy RPGs as well, definitely pick this one up. It's a great series, and I'm glad it's on PC now. It's more active than a Paradox Interactive game, but it is on the slower side of the RPG genre. And just to be clear, like I've said, this is not an action game, even though it really does look like one in videos. Endless Space 2. This is a 4X game like Civilization, which means this will be large, long, and complex. I don't know if I can honestly review this after an hour. This is a game that's going to take many hours, likely multiple days, to get comfortable with, and from there it's going to be a love it or hate it affair. The entire game is galactic conquest, where you have to compete against multiple different, civilizations, species, factions, whatever you want to call them, and of course have different ways to win. Civilization in space, essentially, but I think more complex. The good news is that Endless Space 2 has fixed almost every issue I had with the original game. There's now automation of both systems and ship constructions, a lot more helpful hints, and more. I still think they can do more, more recommendations. It's a bit limited. The tutorial is absolutely awful, of course. If you want to learn this game, I'd probably recommend watching a YouTube tutorial or just watching other people play it. Now, I recommend this game to people who like 4X games, especially Civilization, but are also willing to invest like 20 or 30 hours before they feel like they understand what they're doing. For most games, that would be the full runtime of the game. I think that's what you would need to even feel like you understand what you're doing for most of the game here. It's not bad, it's just very complex. Moving out. So take Overcooked 2 from a couple months ago, add in stricter time limits, more intensity, and you have Moving Out. Oh yeah, you're moving someone else's stuff instead of making food for customers, of course. Moving Out's premise is simple. Take all the tagged items, put them on the back of your truck, and that's it. It's a simple concept, but it can get very complicated fast. Space is usually at a premium for your truck, there's several large objects that you're going to need more than one person to carry, and time limits are pretty tight. I teamed up with my daughter Dalen on this one, and as completionists we were trying to get gold. We spent about 40 minutes trying to beat just the first level. It's not an easy game, but don't worry, there are assist modes that I applaud, reminding me of Celeste, though they're a bit simpler. The assist modes mean everyone should be able to tackle this rather challenging game. I also played for about 15 minutes in single player mode. It's not awful, but this is a game intended for 2 or more players, as important mechanics such as throwing large objects are missing in single player. Play this if you thought Overcooked 2 was too easy or didn't end up in enough shouting matches. Also, play this if you want to play a good co-op game, but be prepared for a solid challenge and a serious need for teamwork, because you will need it. Trine 4 The Nightmare Prince. This is the 4th game of the Trine series, and it's the second one I really enjoyed. The first game of the series was really good, the second game felt like you had to exploit the physics system, third one had awful reviews. Trine 4 is exactly what I wish the series had always been, though. There's an interesting story at the core here with a missing prince. The characters feel less gimmicky and more like they have defined purposes, and all 3 of them have small physics abilities, less hacky and more like deliberate puzzles and challenges. After the first 30 minutes of introducing each of the characters, the first level with all 3 characters was well paced. Trine 4 has solid combat that's enjoyable but not constant enemies. The graphics are great as well, as you'll see, and there's unique puzzles that had me using all 3 characters in almost equal amounts, though, Wizard a little bit more than the other 2. There are a ton of collectibles, of which many are mini puzzles. Pick this up if you've ever liked a Trine game before, because this feels like the franchise as it should have been. If you like physics puzzle games or unique platformers, you'll have a very good time here. I'm really excited to play more. The Wild 8. The snow, the graphics, those bars in the lower left corner. It's yet another survival game with a snowy backdrop. I honestly don't know how to evaluate the survival genre. Yes, you have to have food, warmth, and not take too much damage, but I find this one to be quite challenging. There are a few quests I've already seen, nothing too amazing. The tutorial somehow skips upgrading your shelter and workshop, which are major elements of the game that I figured out after about 50 minutes. The combat is average at best so far. There is a multiplayer server system though, so maybe that is what I'm missing. I think you can play with up to 8 players, and the story so far is going to different bunkers and finding stuff, which kind of gives me memories of Generation Zero. It's not an awful experience, but I've never been big on this genre, and Wild 8 isn't changing that. But I'll recognize it's a pretty good game for what it's trying to be. So pick this up if you like survival games. This feels good, and there's a lot of tension, but there's also very little reason to stay alive. There's this nice, great bunker that you find early on with electricity, television, and more. I'm just kind of wondering, why don't you stay there until you're rescued? The rest of the game should be deciding where to place a chair. Train Station Renovation. I love that name. It's so silly and out there, yet describes a game with 3 words. Train Station Renovation is a game where you renovate train stations. I thought this would be a silly simulator game like Blacksmith Simulator, and it is, but it's also extremely good. There's a zen-like quality to the game where the player slowly renovates a train station from a run-down mess to a pristine location out in the middle of nowhere. There are enough tools and abilities to make this a reasonable task, but there's also something cathartic about cleaning the station as well. I went for 100% on the first level and felt rather good doing it. At the same time, this is a simulation game. You scrub off graffiti, you repair broken windows, you pick up a lot of trash. This game reminds me of Viscera Cleanup Detail, but with better tools and a less frustrating experience. While I normally hate cleaning up, this is just an enjoyable one. If you like PC Building Simulator or believe in the zen of cleaning, you'll enjoy this. If you like the simulator genre, you probably want to check this out. There's no action or violence, of course, but there is also a nice, good, warm feeling as you play. Marie Kondo would love this game. Valfaris. So back in 1992, this group of heavy metal fans got together and released a game that would change the industry called Doom. I bring it up because it's impossible to remove the concept of heavy metal from Doom, and similarly, Valfaris feels like a game that is also linked to heavy metal. From a kicking soundtrack to the insane art, there's this great level design and more. Valfaris will make the player rock out. Even the character will headbang each time he gets a new weapon. This just feels right and awesome. Valfaris is a level-based side-scroller, which is something that isn't really being made anymore, but Valfaris makes me question why not. It brings that feeling of shooting through massive levels, even having mini-bosses and arena rooms. There's an inventive twist where the player gets resurrection icons that allow them to activate checkpoints or skip checkpoints to increase their health and energy levels. It's just a strange reward because good players get benefits and bad players who need the better health and energy get penalized because they use more checkpoints. But the combat is fun, the music here is awesome, the enemies feel unique, and there's a decent challenge to this game. Honestly, I rocked out for an hour and had a blast playing this. Pick this up if you like heavy metal. Also, check it out if you like old school level-based games like Contra. This is not a Metroidvania, even though it looks like it. It's not a game expecting you to replay levels for some currency. It's just an old school 2D action platformer, and for that, it feels great. Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest. This is yet another World of Darkness visual novel / text adventure in the same universe as both of the Vampire the Masquerade games we've had recently. This time though, it's a little different. Heart of the Forest focuses on werewolf lore, revolving around Poland rather than America, and has the main character, Maya, following her family history and lore as it relates to this one forest, the last primordial forest in the world. In the first hour, though, there's been an exploration of the town, as well as numerous characters, even a protest. Werewolf the Apocalypse seems to give players a decent amount of control by letting them try to manipulate their rage level. If that rage gets too high, Maya will be more aggressive and players might not have as much control over her choices, or they have to use their willpower to hold her back. On the other hand, that aggression will actually help Maya get out of situations, so it's a bit of a balancing act. At least that's what it seemed like so far. This is a typical visual novel, though, with a focus on werewolf lore. The story seems good, and I like the setting, but it's not going to be changing many people's minds. If you like the Vampire the Masquerade visual novels that are already out, you'll like this one. Though, even if you don't, I think this is still an interesting take on the series and promises to have more meaningful choices. Yet, at the end, it's still going to play out like a visual novel, and that's only going to appeal to some players, but I did have fun with this one. Lovecraft's Untold Stories. Yet another Lovecraft game. I think someone at Humble is either a huge fan of the genre of Lovecraftian tales, or maybe these games just don't sell that well. Either way, this month's Lovecraft game is rather good. Rather than just an attempt to ape the style of writing of Lovecraft, this is an action roguelite where the players take one of a few characters and try to survive the nightmare. There is of course a health meter and a stamina meter, but also a sanity meter because, Lovecraft. Tons of little mini-events can harm or heal the player, or just provide you with information, a form of currency in this world, and each one of those events are interesting. However, this is an action game more than a lore game. While different old gods are referenced, you fight cultists, and there are various references to Lovecraft, 90% of the game is just surviving the horrors and killing enemies. Also, there is no permadeath, so there's a continue system, even though it says you have to restart. I found this game to be a bit challenging, especially the first boss, but as someone who hasn't really loved the Lovecraftian games before, this one's really fun. If you're a Lovecraft fan, this is an easy recommendation, but even if you don't, it's a good, solid twin-stick shooter with a lot of roguelite elements, even having randomized maps and more. Of course, it is procedurally generated, so if you want more lore and story, that's going to be lacking here. Iris and the Giant. Ever since Slay the Spire came out, it seems like every 3 months we have a card-based roguelite. It might be longer than that, but we've seen Ring of Pain demo, Neoverse, One Step from Eden demo, and then the full game. I'm sure there might be a couple others that I'm forgetting. But you know what? I'm not that mad. Iris and the Giant is another card-based roguelite, but it's not a bad thing. The art style is going to be a love it or hate it affair, and the story here, okay, listen, this is a downer. It seems to be about memories of depression, and I honestly think the game could have survived without it. The gameplay, though, is simple and interesting, and there's a lot of great strategies, as well as multiple different sets of collectibles and upgrades, cards, companions, enemies, and more. The big thing here is every card or item you get is single use. If you use a weapon, you lose that card permanently. So rather than deck building, it's more resource management, and I think that's a good addition as it means you have to constantly evaluate if you want to spend a card on something or save it for the next level or battle. Basically at this point though, you probably already know if you like card-based roguelites. If you do, this is a great addition. If you don't, I don't think this is the game that's going to change your mind. I am a fan of this one, but I'm also a fan of Slay the Spire, One Step from Eden, and more, so it's not really a surprise. Boomerang Fu. I started this game and thought it was going to be a bit of a simplistic game. You have a short melee attack, a ranged attack and a thrown boomerang, and a dash. You kill your opponents or they kill you, and you get points for kills. It's a bit simple. However, after playing it for an hour with my wife and daughter, I'm impressed, and we had some serious fun. This is a great light-hearted party game. The more players the better, and I would recommend adding bots to fill it out because this game is a little sparse at 3 players. Having 6 players, even easy bots, will make this much more engaging. There's a lot of stories I could tell, whether it be the time my wife killed everyone in one go, or when I used to trap and squish my daughter, or when my daughter won the game after trailing my score throughout the rounds.
Whoa, he's admitting someone else won?
This is why I don't let her win. So we had a blast. The 3 game modes are a bit sparse, so there are minor modifiers, and it's a great pick-up and play game, or perhaps a pass-the-controller type game for a large group. Also, the art and animations are really great. Pick this up if you find yourself with 4 or more players or need a quick game for a few minutes with a group of friends. If you want to play solo or want a longer gaming session, this is so not the game for that. With those 12 choices out of the way, we get our usual bonus game. And for this month, it's Co-Open. This is an experimental indie, unique type of game. It's about the player being a small child and going to the store themselves for the first time. The entire game is going around talking to people to solve their tasks, but while I found a bunch of people, there's no quest tracker, and a few of the quests will mention what they want, but never mention it again. There's also no obvious way to get to some of the content, like a ball that's on the ceiling of the greenhouse, that's on the top floor of the store, that also has a massive ice cavern in the basement too. This is treated as completely normal. Okay, I'm sure there's going to be an audience for this one. There's always people who love these quirky indie games that are different to be different, but this one really didn't speak to me. It's too strange and absurd. Like, there's Smile for Me from last month, which was freaking weird, and then there's this, which is just not meshing. If you do pick up the bundle, though, and you like those quirky games, you'll probably enjoy this one, but as always, I say bonus games should never be the reason why you buy the bundle. This one... Listen, I just look forward to not thinking about it anymore. And that's what we have on tap for this month. Honestly, I think it's a great month. There's a ton of choices in a lot of different categories. Almost all of them are fresh games that haven't been bundled before, and there are some major titles. I did a video a couple weeks ago about Humble Choice, and I'll link it at the end, but essentially I say we can't live in the past and say, man, I miss month X, when it was a humble monthly bundle from over a year or two ago. Humble Choice is different, but I think if this is what Humble can deliver in the choice going forward, I would not have a problem with this being the expectation of future bundles. I know next month I'm going to be disappointed with that expectation, but I think this is one of the best, and it's a great value with a lot of diversity in the games. But we come to my favorite part of the month. It's the strongest and weakest, and honestly, I struggled with both of these lists. And the third weakest of this month is Boomerang Fu. I will go to bat for this game. It doesn't have a ton of content, but it is a very fun and entertaining game, but I had to have 3 games on my weakest list, and Boomerang Fu is on this list for 2 reasons. I would say that you need at least 3 players, but probably 4 or greater would be better, which is a lot of controllers for a PC. I also will say this is not going to last. It's a party game. You're going to play it for about an hour, but it is still very fun. The second weakest of this month is The Wild 8. I'm not a fan of the survival genre, and I don't think this game is really that bad. I just think there's some very average gameplay here, but it's also one of the 2 games I didn't enjoy this month. Usually I have more choices for the weakest, but for this month, it's The Wild 8. And the weakest of this month is Outward. I'm sure some people are going to just love this game. There is a hardcore fan base for it. I just couldn't get into it. I dislike how punishing it was and how unpolished it was. But unlike The Wild 8, I am definitely never going to return here. There are enough other games for me to sink my time into, and Outward just put me off. If this is the one that excites you, that's perfectly fine, but it's not for me. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the strongest of the month, and there was a lot I could put on this list. I've changed it a few times, but let's see what's actually there. The 5th strongest of this month is Train Station Renovation. This game shocked me. It's quirky, fun, entertaining, just peaceful. I don't know. I just like the game for some strange reason, and there's nothing wrong with that. The 4th strongest of this month is Iris and the Giant. I love card-based roguelites, but they all feel very similar, except for Iris and the Giant. This is a fresh take on the formula, especially with each card being a single use. I kind of want to play more so I can check out more of the system and see what it does. The 3rd strongest of this month is Endless Space 2. I almost didn't put this on the list. I almost put it in first place. I really don't know what to do with it. I'm giving it 3rd because I'm trusting that it will become more understandable the more time I put into the game, and I think it might be the best game this month, but the amount of time that I think players will have to invest before it feels right is quite a bit. So 3rd it is. The 2nd strongest of this month is Trine 4. This was a surprise for me. I like the original Trine, like I said, and I feel like this is the first game in the series that lived up to the promise of the original game. The fact that it's absolutely beautiful at times does not hurt, and the concept still feels unique. If you disliked any of the Trine series in the past, you may still want to give this one a shot. The strongest of the month is Valkyria Chronicles 4. This may be just my love of the strategy RPG genre talking, but this is the one I'm most excited for. It's also a 40-hour game, so there's a good length with it, and completionists will have even more time to sink in. So that's what I have for my review this month. What do you guys think? Is this what you're hoping Humble will deliver moving forward, or is there something that you felt was missing? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, subscribe, ring the bell, that always helps the channel, and consider liking this video. It's a simple way to say thank you, and I appreciate it. And since you're fans of the Humble Choice, I'm going to be popping up my video on what's happening with the Humble Choice. It's a look back at the first year and a few concerning issues with Humble Choice, as well as a discussion of what Humble Monthly was as well. Check that if you're interested. I also have a video on open world games and why they can be boring at times. It's a good video, I just can't tie it directly into any games this month, but let's pretend I did. Until then, I'm Kinglink, and thanks for watching.